What other jobs did you have as a kid to make a little money?
Oh, I worked in a restaurant one time washing dishes. I worked at the skating rink, putting on shoe skates, for guys and girls that couldn't do it. They'd rent the shoe skates, and I'd show them how to put on and tighten them on for them and everything. And they'd get brand new shoe skates and no wheels on them, so we'd have to put the ball bearings in them, fix it. I did that. And on Saturdays, I got to be floor manager on the skating rink. Somebody get out of hand, speeding, doing stuff, I'd blow the whistle. They listened to me. One thing about that during the war years, man, all these service guys coming in and stuff. I worked at the swimming pool. I'd work at the swimming pool till 7 o'clock. I'd start like 9 o'clock, and then I'd go down to the skating rink. I'd work from 7 to 11. Then on Saturdays, well, when they brought the Air Force cadets into Geneva College, I used to have to go down and open up the swimming pool for the cadets. They'd march up, and I'd have a locker room where they could take their uniforms off, put their swimming trunks on, and then I'd have to do that until they were all done swimming, a couple hours. I have to clean everything up after them, and then lock up and go home.
Did you ever work on the farm for money?
Oh, yeah. Mr. Betke wanted me to go on his farm, work for him. I forget, I think I made $12 a week or something like that, $12 every 2 weeks. Of course, I ate there, they fed me. And like I told you, after milking, they would always give me a gallon of milk, as skim milk, because I took all the cream off of the milk. They had a machine there to do that. But on a dentist farm, I never got paid in money. I got paid in eggs and milk, stuff like that, But now then John DeSiena took over the dentist farm area for work, and I went to Betke farm. Oh, this little guy, he was mean. He was meaner than a cat's crap. Oh, he treated them mean. The horses, he'd actually hit them on the rear end, not the pointed side of the fork, but the back side, he'd get mad. Especially if they'd swish their tail and hit them in the face with their tail. Oh, a couple of times I wanted to take that damn thing off and hit him with it, teach him lessons, but we'd work till noon, we'd go in and eat. And then he had two big trees out in the front of the yard. He had a swing on there. He'd go lay down there, swing, go to sleep. So I figured, well, hell, I'm not going to sit here and watch you sleep. I'd go up the barn, open up the door of the loft. I'd go sit down there and go to sleep myself. And he'd have to come up and wake me up. Pow, time to go to work. Time to go to work. Okay. And they treated me good. I can't say, even though he was a mean little rascal, but he taught me how to plow 2 horses, single plow. And on the edge of this field was all these trees with wild grapevines. Man, I'm cock of the walk, man. I'm got the old horses going, and I did great. I had a big field to plow. Then I was going over towards the woods, and I wasn't paying attention. All of a sudden, the horses stopped. Here, the horse got his head caught in them wild grapevines. So I'd hurry up and untangle the horse and keep going. I could drive the team of horses, but not with a load of hay on them. He wouldn't let me. I couldn't even do that on a dentist farm.
And that was back in the day when hay was mostly cut by hand?
Oh, yeah.
And the corn was cut by hand?
Corn was cut by hand. Yeah.
That was hard work for you, huh?
Oh, I mean, to tell you, you'd cut a field of corn with a sickle. You get down and you'd have to, pull up on it. It's a wonder nobody really got cut bad. But I did that, and then the thrashing, well, first, you cut the hay and just laying there. Danny used to drive the hay rake, and he'd roll it, and then we'd have to make mounds of hay. I remember one time I lifted a big pitchfork full of hay, and big long black snake come out of there like that. In the middle, I saw, it was humped up, and there was 5 little rabbits, little baby rabbits in the stomach. But, yeah, I worked there time to go back to school.
What'd you do with all the money that you earned at these jobs?
I bought odds and ends. And one time I bought a real nice pair of tan shoes. I mean, nice pair of shoes. And I forget what I paid, $12.50 or $14.50 or something like that. Where my dad gave me hell. He said, "What are you spending that money foolishly?" I said, "Foolishly." That's all I'd say. He wouldn't give me money for new shoes, so I bought my own. I'd think that he'd be happy, you know. But my dad didn't know how to say he was sorry and stuff like that. He could beat you and then see you a little bit later and he wouldn't say he was sorry. Not only me, all the kids. He was like that with all of us. But that one time, it was a rainy day. And Louie and I and Bob McCutcheon, that culvert on the end of Beaver Falls there. So we'd go down there, and that's before the water was high. And we just play down there and stay out of the rain. This one time, I forget, I must have been about 12. Louie and I came home, we missed supper. As soon as I walked in that house, I felt something was wrong. In that house there, you know, you come down from upstairs, just the wall, you know, and then you have to go around the wall. And I'm singing that song, "Any Wawa melons today." Well, I was singing that old song, and I whipped around the corner, Wawa, oh, it was my dad. He always had one of these big wide belts, all them metal rings in them. Man, he took that thing off, and he hit me. I let out a big yelp, and I was crying. I ran upstairs. Poor Louie. He caught Louie. He must have busted that belt on him about 3 or 4 times. I remember laying on the bed whimpering. Louie come up and said, "What are you crying about?" He broke his belt on me about 3 or 4 times. And I felt bad for him, you know. I hate to say this, but it's the truth, the gospel truth. I've told other people. My dad was a typical foreigner. There's 2 places for a woman, in bed, in the kitchen. I never really saw my dad hug and kiss my mother, stuff like that. That poor soul went through hell living with my dad. My dad always took care of his mother. He favored his mother more than his wife. And he was down the corner tavern. And my mother and my grandmother got into it. I forget how old it was. I ran all the way from up there in the hill, clear down to the corner tavern. And I told my dad that Mom and Grandma got into a fight. The worst thing I ever did. Because I went back home, he come home later. He beat my mother something terrible. I mean, he actually hit her and knocked her on the floor. He's kicking her and everything, calling her names. And I cried. I thought, why did I ever go down there to the corner tavern? You know, I should have let him drown himself in the beer instead of coming home and beating my mother up there. When Mother started having the nervous breakdown, we lived up on the hill and there was no lights on that big road coming down off that hill. She'd get up in the middle of the night, walk down to the bottom of the hill, and there was this old guy, his name was Eli. She would go to sleep on his porch. Well, it's cold, he'd take her in the house, you know, and keep her warm, and he'd get a hold of my dad and tell him my mother was down there. So he'd come and get her. I don't know what he said to her going home or what, you know. But my father was my father. But for the way he treated his wife, my mother, and us kids, I respected him, but as far as I'm concerned, he could go to hell, live in hell, for the way he acted. My dad put the beer garden and stuff like that over his family. I hate to say it, but it's true. And I remember he'd be working tending bar down that bar in Beaver Falls. He'd call up and tell the girls, "I'm coming home." Say, what we have? And he'd say, pork chop, something. He'd say, okay, I'll be home in a half hour. An hour went by. They'd have to call down there. Daddy, when you coming home? Oh, I'll be home a little bit. Same thing, that went on like maybe 2 hours. And then when he come home, he'd be bitching because the food was cold or something, overcooked. What was the girl supposed to do? But, one thing though, he bought each one of us kids a box of candy at Christmas time. I will say that, But I know if I would have treated your mother like my dad treated my mother, your mother would have crowned me with something. She'd have never put up with that.